Welcome to our teen book talk with young adult authors Cristy Watson, Karen Spafford-Fitz, and me. I'm Lyndi Allison. You'll find our bios and contact information in the description. Today, we'll share our thoughts on reading and writing the tough stuff. As always, if you have questions or suggestions for topics for future, you can post them in the comments or send them to us using the contact info provided. Many young people experience tough situations, so it's natural that these show up in our young adult reading and writing. Cristy, what young adult book have you read that tackles the tough stuff?
Well, thank you, Lyndi, for your invitation to participate in this important dialogue today. And I'm happy to be here with both you and Karen Spafford-Fitz, with whom I've worked together on a possible book series and feel honored that we both have books with the same publishers. I just recently read a collaboratively written book by two of my favorite Canadian authors, Paul Coccia and Eric Walters, called On the Line. Two-spirited plus LGBTQ stories are important for all readers, including readers who identify in this community and readers who have someone they love in this community. These stories definitely tackle the tough issues faced today and are even more important now than just a few years ago. Wrapped in a story about basketball, main character Jordan faces challenges when his mom and dad split up, because in their tight community, gossip flourishes, and the fact that his dad came out and is no longer living with them travels the rumor mills quickly. Deftly written, this book explores Jordan's feelings as he tries to sort through this news and the fallout. I remember reading books when I was young with tough subject matter. They were few and far between, but their themes and messages stuck with me and still have an influence on me now, both in how I write my stories and in how I perceive the world. I believe these stories need to be told and shared because youth struggling with real life challenges need to see themselves portrayed in the literature and need to have a way to dialogue about what's happening for them, to know that they can reach out to others and to know that they are not alone with what they're facing in life. So for today's teen book talk, I want to share some important messages from On the Line that resonated with me and I know will have meaning to the youth reading this book. The first one comes when Jordan and his dad are talking about their old Camaro and how his dad had trouble speaking with his father and being true to himself. As Jordan's trying to figure things out and wonders what all of this means for him, his dad says, "It means I don't want to leave you with the belief that it's more important to be who you think people want you to be, that it's okay to be deeply unhappy with who you are. Don't be the person who spends his life pretending and getting in the way of his own happiness." And another important message that came through this story when no one showed up for their first GSA, Gay Straight Alliance meeting, is that having a GSA in a school is not only about gay rights, it's gender identity and equality, it's human rights. It's hard to be yourself without a support system. And I believe in these powerful and timely words. And one last important message I want to share from this book comes when Dad's new boyfriend and Geordie are finally able to really talk. Brody shares some wisdom that will speak to all readers about hurt and relationships and struggles as we grow up. And I say we, meaning all of us, because we are always still learning. Brody says, when you're hurt, the natural instinct is to hurt back. That doesn't make it right, but it does make you human. Making mistakes is human, but trying to make it right after makes you a better one. And again, I agree with the important message being shared here from the story. This book is about relationships, navigating family relationships, relationships with best friends, relationships with people on school teams, and first loves. Relationships are hard, and this book doesn't shy away from discussing all relationships. We need books that are sensitive to the tough issues faced by teens today and ones that explore these themes with care and compassion. And certainly, On the Line does just that. All right, so Karen, what tough situations have you read about in a young adult book?
Well, thank you for that, Cristy. It's a pleasure. I want to say, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you and Lyndi today. And I have been reading, of course, some books with tough issues. And in fact, I'm delighted to share a brand new book with you. It's called Fly. I'll try to hold that so the glare isn't too heavily on the screen. It's written by Canadian author Allison Hughes, who, like me, lives on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Alberta. And the protagonist of this book, called Fly, is named, his name is Felix Landon Yarrow. And at one point, his mom sharpied his name on, or his initials on his backpack, FLY. And unfortunately, that nasty nickname has stuck. And Felix is rather offended by it because he is rather a proud person. And in addition, Felix has come to identify with actually one of my favorite literary characters, with Don Quixote de la Mancha. And so Felix just feels like he really deserves a more noble name than Fly, but unfortunately that's what he's stuck with. But Felix does believe in chivalry, adventure, and in shooting for an impossible dream. And his character is just so charming. He is funny, he is sarcastic, he's slightly arrogant, and he has a dark sense of humor that I think teens will enjoy. So he's well-rounded, he is relatable, and like any teen, like the teen you just told us about as well, Cristy, Felix is trying to figure out his place in the world. Now, something else to know about Felix is that he faces some additional challenges on a daily basis. He has profound cerebral palsy. He uses a wheelchair that he operates with what he calls his steady left hand. He has trouble speaking and being understood because, and this is a direct quote, "My frustrating mouth, clenched teeth, and uncooperative tongue block my thoughts on the way out." So Felix must navigate life with physical disabilities and with communication difficulties. And because of these things, teachers underestimate him academically, and the students at his school often treat him as though he's invisible, as though he's a nobody. For example, if many students at his school were to look down the hallway and see Felix there in his wheelchair, they might say something like, "The hallway is empty, nobody's there." So he feels terribly overlooked, undervalued, underappreciated, and unnoticed. Yet, in Felix's words, "My body is not all that I am." So many people make false connections, projections, and assume that because my body malfunctions, my mind must too. So Felix, or Fly, is already facing quite a number of challenges, and then an additional challenge crops up at his school. A student named Carter, who has always been exceptionally rude and dismissive toward Felix, decides he is going to make some money. He is going to start selling pills. And because Carter underestimates Felix, he's a little bit careless and he discloses his money-making scheme in front of Felix, who decides that he is going to do something about this. And he's especially motivated when Carter is showing signs of moving in on the girl who he is crushing on. So before long, Felix's wheelchair becomes his steed. His steady left hand, which operates his mechanical chair, becomes his sword. And Levi, his aide at school, becomes his trusty sidekick. His damsel in distress, of course, is his crush, Daria. Well, things don't go exactly as Felix planned, and without giving away too many details, I'll just say that Felix does, however, experience some success. He comes away with a renewed sense of being alive and of feeling noticed by others around him. He also proves, again in his words, that there's a mind in this body of mine. A final note about the book: Fly is written in free verse And this form is absolutely perfect in giving Felix's story a beautiful flow and some breathing space for the reader to experience Felix's thoughts, his wide range of emotions, and his strong, compelling narrative voice. So that is Fly by Allison Hughes. And at this point, Lyndi, I'd love to know what tough issues you've been reading about.
Thank you, Karen, for introducing us to Fly. I'd like to discuss Barbara Martin's Refuge, a Rooster Cochrane mystery. This story is set in Oshawa, Ontario. And as a volunteer and teacher in that area, her main character, Rooster, could easily have been one of my homeless students. It was not unusual to find a sleeping bag in the doorway of our school. In this story, Rooster's sick mom lives with an abusive partner and subsequently dies of her illness. After her death, her partner tosses Rooster out of his home and he moves from squat to squat, homeless through no fault of his own. He grieves his mother while at the same time experiencing a loss of shelter and food security. The story jumps right into the action when Rooster wakes up one morning in a garden shed and discovers police surveilling the area. He later learns his best friend Georgie has died of an overdose, and he is the prime suspect. Knowing that his friend was not into drugs, he sets out to find out how she died. The author shows how Rooster survives life on the street. When I read how he washed his feet got washed in the bathroom of a local coffee shop, it reminded me of a time when a student of mine complained about another student who was washing his feet in the bathroom sink. I explained that he had likely slept in the ditch the night before, and he probably had nowhere else to wash them. Finding something as simple as a place to wash provides a glimpse into the challenges of meeting the most basic of needs. Refuge demonstrates how quickly life on the streets brings trouble to the youth who live there. Rooster must answer interrogating questions from the police, and when a local drug dealer assaults his own mother, Rooster looks after her needs, and now the drug dealer is out for him. He is up against it. Rooster is a likable and resourceful young man who cared for his mother, the drug dealer's mother, and his friend who died. Yet as a street youth, he is suspect and receives trouble for the care he gives. In addition to the ongoing challenges of living on the streets, where to sleep, how to buy food, Martin demonstrates the obstacles that make it challenging to move beyond living life on the street, like the people who lack understanding about their life circumstances and focus on moving them out of the public eye instead of providing real assistance. Martin also clearly shows, while all youth need the support of caring adults and other youth, having support is critical to surviving life on the streets. Many young adult books exclude these caring adults, so the characters have agency. And this implies sometimes that young people have to go it alone. I believe it's important to also have books like Refuge that suggest young people can look for caring adults to help them with whatever issue they are dealing with, and where they can also be inspired to become a caring adult. Rooster finds these caring people in a youth and youth worker who volunteer at a youth center, in a teacher who encourages him at school, and in a family who provides him with shelter. But he still has many emotions and issues to work through to find refuge. Cristy, in addition to reading about tough issues, what tough issues have you been writing about for young adult readers?
Well, thanks again, Lyndi, and I appreciate both of you introducing me to two new books that I need to get. Although all of my books, are realistic fiction that tackle tough issues. But the ones I have with Lorimer children's and teens dive into the more difficult aspects of growing up for young adult readers. I've tackled stories about youth incarceration, about self-harm, and about toxic male relationships and their ways of being with others, along with the fallout for young females who get caught up in their world and the young males who don't want to be that kind of guy. But today I thought I would focus on the tough issues faced by my main character, Logan, in Dead to Me, a book that was published in 2016. Logan lost his dad when he was young, but found that hanging out with his uncle, his father's brother, kept the memory of his father close, and the two enjoyed each other's company. He looked up to his Uncle Jerry, until one fateful day when he discovered a family secret that unraveled his whole world. Logan's anger begins to fester, and now he struggles to trust anyone, causing problems with his new girlfriend and his best friend. He also refuses to talk with his uncle, to even hear him out. This book deals with how feelings of anger and resentment and mistrust can turn into a lack of caring about the future and maybe even give rise to beliefs that one is invincible, which may make a person take unnecessary risks, possibly causing harm to oneself and others. The backdrop to the story is that our four teens find themselves breaking into an old man's backyard, whom they think is out of town, to party away from the prying eyes of parents and other adults. But what they find there is more than they bargained for, and Logan has to face up to how his feelings of being betrayed have manifested into deep anger and have led him away not only from himself, but also from his family, his best friend Quinn, and his new girlfriend, Kaylee. Having worked with youth who struggle with feelings of anger, I know that underneath this emotion is often fear, sadness, confusion, and worry. This story tackles how tough it can be to manage the hard emotions, especially on one's own. Logan takes risks, and I've known youth who go down this same path because the feelings of hurt are so overwhelming. As Lyndi said in her message, it's important to have adults one can turn to for guidance, even though the work is up to each young person. Seeking help takes courage and strength to let someone else know what you're struggling with. And though sometimes not all adults may understand, there will always be someone out there who gets you and gets your story. That's why all of us are here today, writing books with tough themes, to give youth a place to connect with characters that may be feeling exactly what they're experiencing, and to possibly be presented with an adult voice that says what they are hoping to hear. A while back, I was thrilled to receive a note from a juvenile prison in the U.S. where one youth had read Dead to Me and told the librarian after finishing it that he needed to reach out to his dad. I hope it went well for him, and I'm glad to know that Logan's struggle impacted another young person enough to give him the courage to try to reconnect with his own family, and maybe even changing the trajectory of his future. So thank you for listening today, and I'm now going to turn it over to Karen. So Karen, you've written about some tough issues for young adult readers. Can you tell us more about them?
I'd love to, Cristy. And before I start in, I want to say that I think, as you know, I'm a big fan of all of your stories, and you just reminded me that I need to go back and reread Dead to Me. So thank you for that, and for the new book that you introduced us to as well, Lyndi. So I am learning a lot, and I'm taking notes on the side here, just so you know. Like you, Cristy, I often address tough issues in my stories because I view books as safe places where teens can experience the world. And when authors address these tough issues, and particularly when we do so with honesty, sensitivity, respect, and hope, we're arming teens with the information they will need to weather these challenges themselves, and also to better understand and support and empathize with others around them who are experiencing these issues. So for these reasons, I have written about a number of tough issues in my books. In Vanish, I wrote about parental abduction. In Saving Grad, I wrote about domestic abuse. In Pushback, I wrote about restorative justice, and I have a teen in the criminal justice system. Unity Club, homelessness, family estrangement. And for today, I'm going to be talking about another book that I more recently wrote called Pickpocket. And Pickpocket deals with grief and also with teen exploitation. So that's going to be the focus for the next few minutes here. And in Pickpocket, my protagonist is a French-Canadian teenager named Jean-Luc. For the past 2 years, Jean-Luc has been reeling from grief following the death of his younger sister. These emotions have sent Jean-Luc into a hard downward spiral, and while he's been flailing about trying to cope with his hard loss, he has severed the ties from his long-term friends. He has fallen under the influence of a new group of kids who are horrible influences on him, and he has alienated himself from his parents, whose marriage is now at the breaking point. So the story opens with Jean-Luc's parents returning
There she
power went out.
comes.
My apologies. I'm not sure if that was the internet on my end. The last I heard was the story opens with. So maybe we can continue from there.
Okay, we can back it up to that point for sure. So in Pickpocket, the story opens with Jean-Luc's parents returning from a weekend trip to find that Jean-Luc and his so-called friends have thrown a house party to celebrate the end of 11th grade. The party was a disaster, and many of the family's belongings have either been stolen or destroyed by the masses of kids who streamed through the house. Jean-Luc himself is just coming to on the living room rug after drinking far too much alcohol. And at this point, his parents have officially had it. They realize, first of all, they need to put a lot of distance between Jean-Luc and the teens who were being such a horrible influence on him. And they decide the best way to do this is to send Jean-Luc away for the summer to live with his great uncle in southern France. So even before Jean-Luc has recovered from his fierce hangover, he is on a plane to the south of France to live with his uncle Henry, or in French, his uncle Henri, for the entire summer. So Jean-Luc has no sooner arrived in southern France when it starts to hit him that he's very far away from his home, far away from his family, from his friends. He's wishing he had put up more of a fight about actually getting on that plane in the first place. But just as he's having those thoughts, he's walking along a popular coastal path, and he bumps into a lovely, pretty young woman, and they start to have a conversation. And Jean-Luc starts to think, you know what? Maybe this summer won't be so bad after all. Only not so long after, he realizes, after he has left this young woman, Selena, behind, that she has stolen his wallet, that she is a pickpocket. And so Jean-Luc at first is enraged about this. And when he later sees Selena in town, he confronts her. And that's when she discloses that her handler, known as Le Patron, is forcing her to steal 300 euros each day and to turn the money over to him. Otherwise, she will face dire consequences at his hands. So this gets Jean-Luc thinking that where his younger sister did not get to have a long, fulfilling life before she passed away, it feels extra important to him that Selena must escape her terrible handler so that she will get to enjoy a better life. Jean-Luc also realizes that as much as he wants to help Selena, he needs to accept a basic fact. And you alluded to this earlier, Cristy, that Selena must ultimately save herself, that all he can do is support her and try to set those wheels in motion, which he does. In so doing, Jean-Luc honors his sister's memory in a positive way, and he also steps onto a more positive path toward the personal redemption that he needs. So with that, I will stop speaking and turn it over to Lyndi. Lyndi, what tough issues have you been writing about?
Oh, thank you, Karen. What you shared is very significant about both of you, about how important it is for young people to make those choices and then do the work themselves. That's a recurring theme today. I'm sure it's something we'll remember. So while Cristy and Karen write the tough stuff in realistic fiction, I'm writing science fiction and fantasy with a touch of magic realism. I believe in the power of story to provide safe spaces to young people who are working through these tough issues. One night while I was stargazing and talking about the constellations with youth at a wilderness camp for children of inmates and from foster homes, these youth shared their losses, grief, and trauma. As one of the workers described to me their experience, he said, "Picture yourself as a child being awoken to your front door being kicked in, your house being stormed with uniformed people, and your dad being handcuffed and taken from your home in his underwear. That's one way these children experience trauma." Well, I listened to these real life stories of the young people I was with and the choices they were making that were fueled by anger and also self-blame. Our camp out under the stars and their circumstances inspired me to write this trilogy with characters whose grief and emotional trauma drive their choices, but who also learn to process these emotions and heal. The Summer Triangle trilogy tells the story of Jace, an astronomy geek whose baby sister died of a crib death, and Gloria, his artsy rival, whose father was killed when she was a young child. In book one, The Lines Between Our Stars, Jace, after sending a message into space, accepts a mission to travel light years to rescue an alien's child. He couldn't help his baby sister, but maybe he could help the alien's son. Gloria tags along because her father wrote about the planets in the Summer Triangle asterism, and she believes going there will help her feel closer to him. Today, I'll talk about the third book in the trilogy, The Clashing of Our Worlds, in which Jace, who carries the guilt of his sister's death because he prayed she'd be quiet so he could sleep, he clashes with the tribal culture because it has distinctly different values than his. The Typho, a warring tribe, poison the Pan children and trap the Pan as they travel to a mountain where their sick children can heal. En route, as the sickest children die, Jace wants the Pan to bury the children instead of hanging them in ruck slings from trees, thus leaving a trail for the Typho to follow them. But if the Pan bury the children, they believe the wind can't carry them to the afterlife. Jace also wants the tribe to take up arms to protect more children from being harmed. But Nala, the tribe's leader, refuses and holds to her tribe's beliefs and values, not to fight with weapons. When more children die, one of them her child, Nala pokes her skin with spiked hands in a form of cutting to distract from her unbearable pain. This takes Jace back to the night he found his mother in the ditch outside their house, her nightie muddy and covered in blood after a miscarriage. Jace was able to guide his mom into their home to bathe and spends a night vigil watching over her so she doesn't hurt herself. While Jace's mom slowly heals from her deep grief, The tribe awakes the next morning to find a mother has wandered into the river to go to the afterlife to protect her child. Jace's complex emotions over his siblings' deaths and those of the Pan children and that of the mother drive his next choices. He takes control. While attempting to find a tribe to protect the Pan, he inadvertently raises another enemy against them. Now he and Gloria must work with the tribe within the context of their culture to save them. Story is a great place for youth to find characters who have had similar experiences, to see how these characters' emotions influence their choices, and also to see how processing complex emotions can lead to less desperate choices. After a time, Jace and Gloria are able to listen to each other, respect each other's unique to them triggers and mood swings, stay connected, and learn new ways of seeing from each other and those around them. Cristy, you continue to write the tough stuff. Can you tell us what tough issue you're writing about now?
Absolutely. And just before I do that, I wanted to say I heard so many similarities in what all three of us shared around emotions and dealing with tough feelings today. So currently I'm writing about two major themes in my current WIP, my work in progress. Still in high school, my lead character has just entered the workforce for her first time, which is always scary for young adults. And as time goes on, she discovers that she has put her faith in the wrong people, while avoiding the homeless man who collects money from outside the coffee shop. She ends up in trouble one night with youth of her age, and it's the homeless man who comes to her aid. All right, what are you currently writing, Karen?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Cristy, I am eagerly awaiting you finishing that story because it sounds tremendous, just tremendous. As for me, I'm writing, as always, far too many stories at one time, but the one I'm principally focusing on is based on an experience that I actually had. And I'm writing a survival story where a teen who is stranded overnight on a mountain pass between two major landslides must find the courage to take charge and to help keep everybody safe and calm until they can be airlifted from the highway to safety. And what about you, Lyndi? What are you writing now?
Well, Where the Summer Triangle trilogy told the story of Jace and Gloria exoplanet hopping to save these alien children, and in the process, deal with their grief. The Winter Hexagon trilogy, a sequel I'm writing now, has the teens exoplanet hopping to find and bring home the seeds needed to make a tea that they believe will heal Jace's mom of her cancer. And that's another teen book talk. Thank you, Cristy and Karen, for your care and concern in writing the tough stuff for the youth you care about.
Wonderful. And thank you, Lyndi, for inviting us today. I have lots of books that I need to go check out, and I am equally keen to see both of your books, Karen and Lyndi. So thank you for having me.
And I want to follow up with my thanks as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, the powerful emotions that are being shared, the stories that are being shared, whether they're completed or in progress. I'm looking forward to learning more about all of them. Thank you, Lyndi and Cristy, for inviting me to be a guest speaker on your podcast today with Teen Talks.
And thank you for listening in. If there's a topic that you would like us to discuss, please share it in the comments. And most importantly, keep reading and keep writing.